Okay. Make sure I have the right questions. Because I can edit this anyway, Claire,
Yes,
so it's
exactly.
fine. Okay. So, hi, everyone. This is our time to take 5 at the task force, and I just want to take an opportunity as we're saying goodbye to not just a member of the task force, but to a person who has made a great impact on the lives of many people uh, in the area that she's working in women's services. And so, thanks, Claire, for taking time to take 5 with us.
Thank you, Jim, for asking me and for the opportunity. It's lovely to get the opportunity to press pause for a minute and just reflect.
I think you're the first. You're the first of our take 5 with. And I suppose the reason behind this was that a lot of time in our work we work with some fantastic people, some passionate, committed, innovative people, and often at times of transition it just seems like, well, people just move position.
Yeah.
And I suppose take 5 is time for us to acknowledge that you know that people that we work with and the work that we've done has been important to many people. So it's really about us just taking some time to just acknowledge that and to say, look, and an opportunity to reflect on that work and to reflect on that time and even to kind of hold that in a way as well, you know. So yeah, thank you again, Claire, for taking the time to do that. So maybe our first kind of, as when you look back on your time, on your career, on your time with Tintean and all the other fabulous places you've worked, what are the moments that probably stand out the most to you? And even if you want to just maybe tell people, sorry, a little bit about yourself first before we kind of delve into that. Sorry, I just presume that everyone knows who we are, but maybe just to let people who may not know or have worked with you or encountered you, maybe who you are and what your role has been for yourself. Yeah.
Perfect. I will do. So I suppose, look, I mean, for me, I won't go on too much about it, but just to probably synopsize it, I was late getting into education. I didn't go to college straight after school. I went straight out into the workforce, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do with myself. Didn't have a clue. And I also grew up in a family where we had active addiction within my family. So I had one of my siblings, who I just adore so much, was in active addiction from quite a young age, really, from 16. And our family was in complete turmoil, complete torment. And it was so hard. It was so difficult. And we all slotted into all these different roles, as we know that family members do. And so mine was very much of helper. Me and my mom were very much of helper, trying to find him, trying to find support for him, but also the dread of the guards coming to the door one day and saying, that's it, he's gone. And went through years and years of, I suppose, everyone helping him, supporting him, trying to find treatment, different options for him. We went to a couple of support groups ourselves, and in those support groups, we were told to talk about ourselves, to think of ourselves, and we weren't able to do that at that point because we were like, but he's going to die and we need to help him. We can't talk about ourselves. So obviously we didn't understand at the time the absolute need for self-compassion and self-care. But eventually I went to college with all of this going on, and I started my training as an addiction counselor. And within that training, I would say I had some light bulb moments that I would now credit for giving me the education and the tools and the skill set and the permission to actually help my sibling in the way that made sense to us as a family. So where we had been maybe offered one way and he had tried that one way on multiple times, and we were being told rock bottom is really important, he needs to hit rock bottom, all of these things, while I understand what's behind it, and I understand that it can be phenomenal for so many people, these different methods that are out there. For us as a family and for him, it didn't ring true. And we didn't know what to do. So I remember I went and spoke to one of my lecturers at the time, an amazing man who's still involved, I believe, with the SAIL project in Dublin now, and an unbelievable harm reductionist who completely opened my mind to harm reduction and the fact that there is no one size fits all approach. And really the biopsychosocial model, all of that, I was like, this is humane. This allows me to still love him. This allows me to do whatever I need to do to help keep him alive, and for our family the permission. And I said to him, I said, we just don't know what to do. I said, at this stage, it would be easier if the guards came and told us that he was gone, because we were in such pain all of the time. And he got so angry at me. He said, don't you ever speak like that again. Don't you ever say that, because where there's life, there's hope. And he just said to me, he said, so if your sibling was in an accident right now and knocked down on the road, you know, what would you do? And I was like, going, sure, like I'd help him. And he said, no, but specifically, what would you do? And I was like, well, I'd call the ambulance. And he said, then what? So he was like, play the tape all the way forward. And I was saying, well, we'd go to A&E, and then he'd get help from the doctors. And he was like, and then what? And then he'd have a cast or surgery, and then we'd look after him. And he said, so that's what you do. He said, your brother would have needed intensive care. So now your brother needs intensive care. And it might sound silly that we needed this permission as a family, but I remember coming back from Dublin, because I lived in Kerry at the time with my family. And I remember coming back from Dublin and ringing my mom on the train, and I was so upset. And I said, it's okay, we can do it. Because at the time, there was like, he was losing so much weight, he wasn't eating. And other people were kind of telling us, no, he just needs to find his own way. And we were like, but sure, he's going to die. He's starving. So he gave us permission to actually go and bring food around to him and sit with him and keep him alive. And he went on to have an amazing journey within Ireland, within Thailand. He met a beautiful woman, married, has his kids, owns his own business. That's my start of how I came into this. And I now have, just not much more than 20 years in giving service to people who find themselves in all sorts of challenges and difficulties and just needing a little bit of help.
I think what's really beautiful about what you described there, and thank you for sharing that first and foremost, Claire. But and something that I hear a lot and have experienced a lot too as well, which is embracing the I don't know as a start of a process. And that so many times, you feel that, look, I just need to know. I need to know what to do. I need to know where to go. I need to know how to do. And yet, oftentimes it's just sitting in that I don't know that allows us maybe to stop grasping initially, and then maybe start thinking about different ways. And what I really heard from you was, in the permission was hope.
Absolutely.
In the permission was hope. And a way. The I don't know offered you actually a way, which seems. And so when you think about that, then Claire, think about that space of meeting someone that gave hope, that gave possibility, that helps you to be there. That seems to be the almost the call to adventure for you, doesn't it?
Totally. You're absolutely right. And I think I'm really glad that I've never lost that even in, like, I've gone on to work in homeless services now for over 20 years. And so always with people maybe who have different, multiple needs, and being able to sit and hold that hope for somebody and actually see that hope for somebody, even when they can't see it. And I think as well, just becoming very solution focused, because there's always something we can do. It's never hopeless. It's never hopeless, because where there is life, there is hope. And so even sitting with a woman who may have, been recently assaulted, or a woman who begins to feel safe enough to open up around her experiences around losing her children, any of these incredibly terrible and painful situations, to be able to actually sit with that. And you're so right with the I don't know, because they might not know where the path is, and I might not know, and I'm not them, so it's not for me to determine their path. But to be able to just sit with that and actually hear that pain and hold them in hope, so that eventually a little bit of a way becomes clear. And it does, because there's always a step we can take. And a step in the right direction is a step in the right direction. Doesn't matter how tiny it is. And that's a gift that I was given. And that's a gift that I get to give back, which is beautiful.
So really, it really is poignant, I suppose, that when we create space within each other and for each other, that becomes the very thing that we can offer people, which is that relationship, I think, is what I'm really hearing, that the importance of just being with, the importance of even sitting in that, I don't know
Yes.
either.
Yes.
But what I do know is that there is hope. I do know that there is something that we can do. I think that's a really really important.
And I think, Jim, I think you're so right, because what I'm hearing when you're saying that, and I think that's exactly it. I think if we can sit in that, then that's helping to reduce the power dynamic also that can often occur between those who are providing the help and the support and those who are coming because they're saying, I need help, I need a hand up. And I think it's really important for us to just do everything we possibly can to reduce that power dynamic, because it's a case of, and if we can do that, if we can say, I don't know, or if we actually are able to say, that's really hard, that is really awful what you've experienced, that is so tough. And then if they say, what will I do? To be able to go, I haven't had that experience myself, so I don't know, but maybe we can find a path together. Maybe we can just explore what it might look like. And now I'm somebody sitting side by side with somebody. I'm not sitting above somebody being, I'm the big helper. My ego is in the room, but it's just, come on and we'll see what we can do together and we'll see what sits right. And it is relationship. Connection is it's the absolute number one thing. It doesn't matter whether I've been a project worker, a team leader, a manager. It doesn't matter what role I've been, and I've had all of those roles. The connection and the relationship is central to everything. And I would say for any social care practitioner, addiction worker, people in probation services, whatever, if you're coming into this and you don't have the desire and the want to build relationships first and foremost, then I think it's going to be a very hard road for you. But actually, more importantly, it could be a hard road for the people we support. And that's not right. That's awful.
Yeah, I think it's something that's really, it's really important, that actually the quality of relationships that we have within the system itself actually has a direct impact on some of the outcomes that people can actually receive. I'm wondering, Claire, are there moments that kind of stand out to you that really really brought that experience that you've had and this wisdom from within to light? Are there moments that stand out as you look back over your career?
Do you know, there are, like, when I first started, I was working in a mixed sex hostel, a very low threshold hostel. It was an amazing experience. I remember one of the first gentlemen that I was supporting in there, and he was so full of scars, self-inflicted scars from everything that he was dealing with, and I suppose straight away I was like saying, right, he is wearing the traumatic experiences in his life on his skin. He's wearing that. That was one, because I suppose that and my different placements through all the different, I suppose, treatment centers and hostels and so on, allowed me the opportunity to see that things happen, people, and experiences shape people, and experiences lead to our feelings, and the feelings lead to behaviors. And all of those things have helped me to realize that any behavior I see is simply a means of trying to communicate something. That's all it is. That's what behavior is. So that was one of them. That was a standout one for me, because I could see how he was viewed, and I could see he was viewed through the lens of risk. And risk, like, I mean, to himself, absolutely. But there was fear. And I think, like, there was fear in some of the staff members. And I can understand that, because when we don't understand something ourselves and we don't know about it, we do get scared and maybe we back away a little bit. But we just need to seek to understand. We need to seek to find out from somebody what happened to you. What happened to you, so that we can find a way forward. And then one of the most groundbreaking ones to me was when I first joined Tintean, which is 9.5 years ago now. was the recognition that most of the women that were there were mommies, but they didn't have their children with them. And I had, up to that point, I'd worked within Housing First project as well, and I'd worked with a lot of men and a lot of women. I had personally been supporting one lady through her pregnancy, and knowing that this baby was going to be taken into the care system, and recognizing, that's before I ever got to Tintean, recognizing that there didn't seem to be any wraparound, bar what we were trying to provide, around, well, how could we actually use this 9 months to actually help this lady to remain with her baby, to remain with her child? It was like it was a given. She had previous children in the care system also. She'd never gotten to mother. She'd never gotten to mother. And she was consistently trying to get pregnant. And that was met with frustration by a lot of the services. But I was like, but sure, of course she's wanting to get pregnant again. She's a mommy. Like, just because she doesn't have her baby with her doesn't mean she's not a mommy. She has all of this love to give, and she's nowhere to give it. So for the 9 months that she got to hold on to that baby, and it makes me emotional even thinking about it, for that 9 months, she was in control. And she got to be that mommy. And did she make mistakes? Yeah, sure, we all make mistakes, absolutely. But what really struck me was she was never assessed as being a mother, and her parenting, they never gave her an opportunity to see her parenting. They saw risk. And I'm not saying there wasn't. And I'm not saying that there isn't reasons. There absolutely is reasons that children are safer away from their mommy for some period, where they're going through things and where maybe they need to. But equally, I suppose equally, one of the things, and I'm very passionate about it, is we're missing the links here, because there's the opportunity to put that wraparound, that community around the woman, around the mommy, like happens in a lot of other Indigenous communities throughout the world, and that the village supports the family and the child. It's not just removing the child. So that was monumental to me. And then when I came into Tintean and recognized we've all these mommies within our service, and some of them don't even get a phone call with their child, don't have any access to their child. I hate that word, access. They have no contact with their child. And yet maybe there was, mental health issues, substance use issues, and again, services. So shared care is something I believe very strongly in. So we were really trying to put the wrap around in with these women. But one of the things that was really missing on the care plan all of the time was, how is she going to get her child back? Where is reunification? Why is reunification not on the table? Why are we saying, oh, but sure, she relapsed. Oh, but sure, she can't stop using. If she would only stop doing that. And I'm kind of going, and it's the addiction counselor part of me, I suppose. I'm looking at this kind of going, sorry, this woman is grieving. This woman is absolutely grieving the loss, even though it's not a loss, but it's a complicated, complex loss of her beautiful child or children who are living somewhere else, and she has no control over. And she has to toe the line, and she has to tick the boxes so that she might be allowed a half an hour with that child every few months. I was like mind blown over the fact that there was so little support for those women. Mind blown. And I don't have that experience. I have 2 of my own and 2 stepchildren, so I have 4 children. 4. And if God Almighty, I can't imagine if I was in that situation, the grief and the loss. And then there's the shame and the stigma, because women, mothers, are judged harsher. There is nobody judged as harshly as a drug-using mother who has lost her children, whose children were taken away from her. And I just think that's a whole area that we need to do so much more. So for me, that was one of my major standout moments. And I thought, if I can help, because I'm in this organization now in Tintean that's in existence since 1999, but I'm like, what can I do to improve the lives of people that we support? And thereby improving the lives of the staff as well, because we feel amazing and empowered when we get to do something, we get to give back. So that's my long-winded answer.
No, I think it's really I think it's really, really important. It touched on so many really important aspects of things. I mean, when we take a reductionist view towards a person, sometimes I often find like it's I relate sometimes it to being like a field hospital, um, where decisions are made that we need to remove the leg and the arm, and if the arm has to go too, well, then that's a necessary consequence because we just have to keep them alive. It's the triage thing,
Yeah.
and I think what's really poignant about what you had said is that sometimes we have to think about what else has been removed that isn't on the assessment, like the name and role of mother.
Yes.
I mean, and sometimes, and I think all the times, I think it's really important that we ask people to, tell us what role they have that matters to them, irrespective of how we find and arrive into their lives. I think, and I think that's something I've definitely taken myself. I think as well, Claire, which is to kind of ask people. We have assessments now. We're quite rightly for people where they can express their own gender, their own, but in some ways we need to ask people that identify as mum and dad.
Yeah.
We can forget that, and that they are powerful words, and they come with lots of meaning, motivation, desire. Yeah, and I think to negate that, to miss that is a mistake.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Allow them to have their identity. That
Yeah.
that identity, it's a sledgehammer to take that away from somebody. So to,
Hmm.
empower them to kind of realize, no, 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 you're still a mommy, you're still a daddy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's huge.
And that it matters, I think.
Yes.
It matters, yeah. So you've been involved in services for over 20 years of a career. When we think about that arc of involvement, that arc of being with people, um, have you noticed changes over the 20 years? And if you have, or not, what would you like maybe to speak into some of the changes that you may have noticed over the years?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's really interesting with being in homeless services, so working with addiction and recovery and so on, but within homeless services, has allowed me to look at things, I suppose, from a housing perspective, the structures, the environments, and also the supports and the services. So I suppose there's been different governments and there's been different housing plans, and now we're under Housing for All. There's been all these different plans, and look at us in a massive housing and homelessness crisis. And I always say it's not an emergency at all, actually, because if it was, well, then we'd have the field hospital sort of mentality, wouldn't we? We'd be saying, and really, emergency is a 6-month thing, isn't it? It's not something that's going to go on and on. So we're not in emergency at all at the moment. It's not seen as an emergency. It seems to be just our new norm, our normality. But I think we need to fight against that because it's not normal. So I've seen lots of different policies come out and lots of different variations of policies around housing. One of the biggest things around homelessness, I suppose, that has driven a lot of changes is the acceptance of housing first, the acceptance of the housing first principles. And again, it's interesting because when I was back in college all those years ago and learning about this around how it developed with Dr. Samson Barris in New York and then brought it to Canada and all of this. And it really was for veterans, war veterans at the time, because of course they had a payment also linked to that. If you were a veteran, you'd have a payment. So then you get extra credits for housing and so on. So I suppose when he set it up, even though it was really, really new and my God, groundbreaking, in America, there was the supports along with it, the financial supports. And we probably didn't have that for a long time here. So it was set up here in Dublin as pilot. And then I was privileged to be involved in the setup of the pilot in Waterford in 2013. But I remember at the time, it was like, oh my God, I was like, well, where are the houses? This is great. Where are the houses? And it was like, oh yeah, no, you need to find them through the private rental market. And I was like, whoa, no, that's not going to work, because we cannot be allowing and looking to the private landlords to solve the social housing need. But anyway, so housing first is the biggest change. because I think what that does is it helps to take away the judgment and the stigma and the stereotype from the individual. That's what I have found anyway. It's a recognition of the fact that people come to homelessness for a myriad of different reasons, and everybody is deserving. It's not about who is more deserving. Everybody needs it and everybody should have it. And so it's also a recognition of, and this is what I love about Housing First, is the recognition of the fact that if there's multiple needs, well, then there needs to be multiple agencies, but that they're all coordinating the wraparound support to the individual, to the person. And really, and Jim, we've had multiple conversations about this over the years, the whole idea of care and case management is not novel, is not new, yet the care is often missing from it. It's all about just case managing. Whereas actually, if you're actually utilizing the Housing First principles with choice and control being at the center of the individual, then it's their care plan, it's their support plan. It's not my support plan as an agency or as a practitioner. And that has created some amazing outcomes for people, because guess what? We give somebody a house and we provide them support. And guess what? They're able to remain in that home and make it a home, and actually moving away from surviving to thriving. Like, that's unbelievable. Whereas I suppose up until that coming to Ireland, it was very much hostel based. And then if somebody lost their tenancy, there was a lot of punishment for that. Whereas within Housing First, there is such an acceptance of Housing First now as a way of working, that even within our transitional service in Tintean, when I came, because I'd come from Housing First and I fully love the principles of Housing First and believe they're just humane, they're right, then I said, well, we need to apply those principles to our transitional service, even if it's not long-term. Now we have long-term accommodation as well now, but at the time we didn't really, so it was just transitional. But I was saying, well, we can still offer choice and control. We can still give people options. We can still recognize that they have the right to long-term supported housing if they want it and need it. So we can do all of these things. And that has allowed a lot of people in Ireland to actually experience fantastic support. And it has taken a long time for the auxiliary supports to come in. You know, like, I find that the housing side of it and the homeless services side of it is always willing, always. It's just trying to get the other organizations to the table and keep them at the table that's difficult, because sometimes they'll only come to the table on a case-by-case basis. That's frustrating, because you're like, no, this needs to be this is how we work. So that's frustrating, but that is a change, and that's continuing. I don't see that going anywhere, because it's recognized as this is what's needed. Some people will need you to walk alongside them for a little bit, and some people will need you to walk alongside them, then back away, then come back around, because we all have things in our lives. We might be grand for a year or two, and then something happens like a sledgehammer, and we just need somebody by our side again. And to know that there are services that are not time limited like that, that it can be with you for life, that's beautiful. That's a massive change that I've seen. Huge one.
I think that's often the case, and I hear that, Claire, just to resonate that the importance of Housing First, yeah, and that approach, but also as well, and I hear this from our own projects and different projects around the Southeast, particularly the community-based projects, where it is a lifelong journey, you know, and people come in and come out, and sometimes the system can sometimes forget that in the age of you know, the metric of intervention, you know, whether that's how many, and yet the reality is, as you said so beautifully, the reality of this is that there is relationship here that's not just one off, and it's not just episode ending, and that reality of something. And there's something else that's really kind of coming through in what you're saying too as well, is that there's also an element of, and particularly with care and case management, there's also an element that sometimes we have collective responsibility for each other and to each other. And I think that's probably the essence of what I've heard. I heard that in the beginning, in your own lived experience, you know, your relationship, but also the responsibility within that relationship to help, to be there, to care, to understand, and to be part of a support system, as opposed to. And I think this is probably something that I can see definitely in the Southeast, really starting to come to the fore, in terms of understanding that it is a lifelong relationship, and understanding that actually how we relate to each other as services is a key aspect in terms of creating environments of care, not just for people who use services, but for people that work in services too.
So true. Oh,
Yeah.
that's so true. And actually, like that's massive, because if we're recognizing in somebody that maybe they'd really benefit from this service, maybe they'd really benefit from that, if we don't have the relationships and maintain the relationships there, well, we don't even know the remit of the service, we don't even know where it stops and starts. So how can we appropriately refer and actually help the person to navigate all of these different systems that are around? And I think the other part of working with other services is, and this is probably a mind shift that I wish more services would move towards, is to stop being insular and protecting our own patch. That it actually has to be around sharing. That ultimately it is around sharing the resources. There's, unfortunately, with the way things have gone, and it happens within the community and voluntary sector as well, because we're funded on an annual basis. We're not funded on a multi-annual basis. That means the competition for scarce resources is huge, and that can take over and actually take away from the energy that we need to be putting into actually supporting the people that our services were set up to support in the first place. Whereas I think, and I remember somebody in the staff team, it's going back a good few years now, saying to me when I first came to Tintean, I don't know, we had done something, whether it was a group or a document or something we'd created with the women. And another professional in another organization was saying, oh my God, like, that's great. Would you ever be able to send me that? And my response was, absolutely. I'll email that to you, or whatever the case. And I remember the staff member kind of saying to me, why are you giving that away? Like, that's ours. Like, we've made that, we've done that. And again, I'm often mind blown, but I was mind blown by that, because my response was, well, why would we not? Like, what? Are we the gatekeepers? Like, why would we be gatekeeping? What's that about? That's about us as services. That's about the service, and that's about broken systems and system errors. That's not about the people. That's not. And that's moving away. That's moving into the ego again. And it's moving away from just the seeking to serve and support and be part of community. And so that's one of the things I'm really proud of bringing to Tintean. We give everything. If we discover something, if we create something within the organization, because it's with the women, it's never us, it's with the women, then why should it only be that people who come to Tintean, and we're only a small organization, that only those people get that support? Absolutely not. It should be. So I would love it to be more of shared resources, but I also know that we need multi-annual funding in order for services and organizations to be able to feel generous like that, maybe. And that's a bit sad. But we still don't have to be. But we don't have to be hemmed in by that. That's what gets me too. It's like, just because the system is that way does not mean we have to mold ourselves to the system. We can still stay beautiful within that, and compassionate within that, and giving.
I think when I hear you speak so much about collaboration, about giving, about the importance of working together, are there, and actually how even within systems that we can still do that there is a freedom and a choice in some ways to embrace that way of working if we choose. But are there moments really, Claire, that stand out to you? If I was to ask you your top two moments of collaboration, that felt the most meaningful to you. I know that's a big ask, but are there two that kind of really stand out to you that said, yeah, look, this is where how I feel and how I think about the way things should be, how they could be, that was realized? Would you mind sharing those?
Yeah. I suppose I've one big one that comes to mind, but I'll speak into maybe the first one that is lovely to think of, actually, because I haven't thought about it in a while. But again, I suppose it's with the women we support, because even though I collaborate with so many people, it's the women that are within our services. It's that collaboration actually that is the gold. That's the gold, because it's their own lived and living experience. So we're always assessing, and we're always asked to assess. So we have to use particular documents to assess. And I've always, and I train people in how to do those assessments. I've done that for years, because it's around building the relationship while we're doing the assessments that is key, obviously. But they're not strengths-based questions. They're very much questions that are rooted in what's wrong. You know, what are all the bad things that have happened, and what is the bad situation you're in now? You know, what are you using? You know, all this sort of thing, which I understand the reason for it. But one of the collaborations that I would be very proud of is when we sat with the women and just received feedback from them, from ourselves, from our own organization, around what is that assessment process like? What is that assessment document like? And so on. They hated it. And they were like saying, like, we come in and you're feeling so vulnerable, and then you're asked all of these questions. So then we said, well, what would it look like to have a different, like, what should we do? What could we do? So we developed together a women's strength-based assessment. And now within the organization, and it's beautiful. It also looks beautiful. It's visually appealing. It's all of those things, but it also speaks to the strength in the women. So straight away, it's how we, like, language is so important, isn't it? So how we're phrasing the question allows them to speak into the strength that they have within themselves. That yes, there's pain and there's anguish within that. Of course there is, but they also get to hear themselves telling their story from a strengths-based perspective. That's huge. That's one thing I'm really proud of, because I think even within that, even if, you know, with our KPIs and so on, we have to ask all the other questions. Well, actually, we're asking those questions with this assessment in a different way, and then we can fill that out later. Do you know what I mean? So that's one that I'm very happy with. There's my doggy coming in to say hello to me. And then the other one, I suppose, around collaboration that I'm very, very proud of is our Mother's Hope group. Our Mother's Hope group, with the team within Tintean, with the women that we support, and with Manala Kayla, that we're so proud to be a part of. That we were able to not only set up the Mother's Hope group for mommies who are separated from their children, but we've also now, and that's what Manala Kayla supports, so, and as part of the task force is also part of Manala Kayla, which is just all these connections that we're after getting. It's powerful, and it's led to so many beautiful things. So we've now have the Mother's Hope Flexible Facilitators Guidance that we are gifting to everybody. Not to say this is how it should be done, not at all, but just to say this is what we did, and this is what the women said they wanted, and this is what they said worked for them. But, you know, use it. Take bits if you want to take bits. Don't take bits if you don't want to take bits. If the women don't want it, that's okay too. That's fine. I'm really proud of that, because I think from all the way through, realizing how unseen these mommies were, that's just disgraceful, I think. Absolutely disgraceful. And we have the opportunity to see them and to just hold them. So I'm really proud of those two pieces. Yeah. And that one is my biggest one. I'm like thrilled that I got to be part of that.
I think it's really important. And they're beautiful, Claire, and beautiful examples, I suppose, of collaboration. I think it's really important what you had said about giving of the resource and making sure, because the idea for I know, which is, why shouldn't there be a Mother's Hope group that women can set up for themselves? Why shouldn't there be a resource that people can use in services, and that we have these spaces and places? Yes. And I think that's the thing that I suppose that's really important, that we create spaces where people have a voice and have a recognition, where they can be part of something, and where we're inviting ourselves into changing a landscape. What wasn't there to bring it there, what wasn't available to make it available, not just through SLAs, service level agreements, or that, but actually just through genuine connection and wanting to kind of make things better. I think the last question I have for you, and we could talk all day, to be honest, but the last question I have for you, you're stepping forward into a new chapter in your life, yeah, and a very exciting time. as well. Yeah. And I suppose, what would you, if you had advice, or if you had a call of a call to the task force itself, and to maybe people working out there every day doing the work that so many of the services and groups and people lived experience that we have, what would you say to the task force to either keep in mind or to move forward? What advice would you give?
Love that. That's a great question. I've adored being part of the task force and representing women and women's services, and it's interesting because I really experienced the Southeast Task Force as a place, as a collective that really wants to hear the voices of women and the unique experiences of women and respond. And we've done that over the years, Jim, and you've been such an instrumental part of that. I think a major thing is very similar to what you've just said. That really struck a chord with me. And it's not just what our SLA says or our grant aid agreement says. Because really we could just stick to that, couldn't we? And we'd just be doing the job. Like we could. So you have that option if you choose to. Well, why would you? And I think with the task force, I think it's around, I haven't needed to be an agitator within the task force, because the task force is already moving. The task force is not something that is stagnant and is just, oh, let's hear from this service, let's hear from that service. It's a case of, we need to be moving in the right direction and adapting. And I have actually found the task force to be so open to all of the different avenues and what's out there, what's best practice in other areas, what could we bring to the Southeast that would actually improve the lives of the people that we support. So I think that's absolutely huge. And I think it's like a call to action, really. I think not only for the members of the task force, but for anybody that has the absolute privilege of working in our sectors, is be an agitator where you need to be an agitator. Be that activist. Don't just accept no, or don't just accept that, oh, we've no funding for that, because actually, as we know, we can always find it. It's there. And so often it doesn't even need the financial input in the beginning. So often you can just have an idea, and you can actually just see something that needs to change. And why can you not be part of that change? You absolutely can. So I just think that will actually keep a person's passion alive within this industry, because it can be tough as well. Of course it can, but it's an amazing sector to be a part of. So be an agitator, be an activist. Do not be part of the system, because if you're not working against it, then you are part of the system. So that's probably my call to action.
Yeah, what a great call. What a great call. And I think, yeah, and thank you so much for that. And I think, Claire, I just want to, just as we finish, first of all, just to say, on behalf of the task force, on behalf of the people that you've served, the people that you've worked alongside, for your tireless activism, for your ability to say things as they are, for your fearlessness in relation to saying that, like, why can't we? Sure, that's not right. And for standing up when things needed to be, when we needed to stand up, and so on behalf of the task force and everyone, I'd like to thank you for your 20 years, over 20 years of service and commitment to the lives of people and systems, and to say, oftentimes we may wonder that, and a kind of an existential question we can ask ourselves sometimes is, did what I do make a difference?
Yeah.
And I think, Claire, I think you can, honestly, the answer to that question for you is yes. Yes, it did. Yes, it will. So on behalf of the task force, I just want to say thank you for your for being you and for bringing yourself to it. And we wish you all the very best in the future, knowing that you're not getting away that quickly, but at the same time, to acknowledge as you move from one into another, just to say thank you. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm very grateful. Thank you.